Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalized keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewelry, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF627EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 942 48. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewelry Workshops. Vale Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware, including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@valegewelryworkshops.co.uk or even phone them at 07789 794248. Oh, it does feel like a long time since I did an episode. It feels like a long time. I'm trying so hard to get you guys up to date with all the episodes that I'm doing, but hey ho, how's everyone doing? Obviously, you know me, Rhys here on Creative Space Podcast. How's it going, guys? And on this episode today, I have none other than the Irish author of The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, and my brother's name is Jessica, John Boyne. John and I sit down to talk about his new book, Earth, and we also talk about his latest book as well from being published last year, which is called Water. And also we talk about his other books in the past, how he started off as an author, how he approaches writing, how he approaches character. We talk a lot about his work, but also we talk about censorship, what we can write or can't write, and what he encourages people to write. We talk about a lot of things. Also as well, it was just absolutely madness because when I tried to get him on Zoom, my computer decided to crash and it took about 10-15 minutes, which, you know, some people say, well, it's not that long, Rhys. It doesn't take that long. It did take long. You know how some people say it may have lasted for a few seconds, but it lasted longer, and it was absolutely diabolical how my computer crashes and I had to go and try and fix it before I can get him onto the podcast. But looking back at it, I'm really proud that I had someone like him on the podcast to have a deep discussion about writing, censorship, and a few other bits and pieces as well. So I'm really glad that you guys are still following me on this one big journey, and make sure, you know, if you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, you like, share and subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Spotify or Spotify for podcasters or any other platforms that it's on, and I appreciate the support that you guys have given me throughout this journey. So without further ado, let's get on to it. It's me and John Boyne on Creative Space Podcast. John Boyne, I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on the podcast. You've written so many books, and I really want to know. I want to ask you so many questions, and the beauty about the podcast, we could go on for as long as we want to talk about all your works and everything. But one of the first questions I really wanted to ask you was, I watched a podcast that you did the other day, and you first wrote a play. Is that, am I right in saying that you did Robin Hood?
Oh yeah, when I was a child,
Yeah.
10 or 11 years old, it was my first attempt, I guess, at doing something creative. I mean, I was always writing anyway, even from, 7, 8 years old. Stories were my thing. I was reading and writing were always completely connected to me. But yeah, it was an adaptation of The Adventures of Robin Hood that I wrote as a class project, and we put it on at the end of the year or something, and I wrote it, I directed it, narrated it. It was the had to be the star of the show.
Was it like you wanted to be the next Kenneth Branagh or something like that? Was it?
It was probably some sort of like narcissistic thing inside me that had to be involved now, or maybe just controlling everything. I don't know, but it was fun. It was a nice experience. Although it's probably the only I think it is the only play I've ever written.
Would you ever consider going back to writing theatre?
Possibly, but actually, what I've got into more is script writing. During
Okay.
the pandemic, I turned 50, and I was kind of looking for sort of a new challenge, something that because I've written so many novels for so many years that I was looking for something different to do, and I thought I'd try my hand at script writing. So I've done a little bit of that, trying to get a few things off the ground, some original stuff, and then I got commissioned to adapt somebody else's novel, and I'm trying to get those going at the moment. So I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but like the day job will always be writing the novels. But it's been
Mm.
fun to do something a little bit different.
Do you know when you so when it comes to adapting a novel into a script, what is it that you got to try in a sense of what is you got to try to do? Do you want to try and stick to the source material that the book has? And what I'm trying to ask is what is the most complicated thing when you're trying to adapt a book into a script?
I think it's probably trying to find a way to not be enslaved to the original material while remaining true to it, to the spirit of it. So I've only done one of these so far, adapting Sarah Crossan's novel Moonrise, and the novel itself is brilliant, but it's also a novel. And I think when anything gets adapted for screen, it is a translation of sorts. So in the same way that a foreign language translator might have to change some of your idioms and so on. There's different ways I think to adapt it on screen. When they made Boy the Striped Pyjamas, for example, not every scene in the book is in the movie, and not every scene in the movie is in the book. But those that are in the movie that aren't in the book feel to me very true to the sense of the book, and that could have been
Mm,
in there. So I guess that's what I look for when I'm doing that is to respect the source material, but just not be locked in by it.
mm, mm. And how are you finding it now when you writing when you're doing script writing? Do you find it a new challenge to refreshing? What is the um what is the difference between obviously writing a novel and writing a
And
script?
it's probably more fun actually writing scripts. It's because it's all dialogue really, and I've always quite liked writing dialogue. And a novel is a much longer process. It takes about 18 months for me, and a script you can write in much quicker time and rewrite quite quickly. But I just enjoy the kind of back and forth on the dialogue. So um, I think a lot of my novels are quite dialogue based anyway. I tend to seem to go into that much more the sort of prosaic
Mm.
writing, but it's nice to kind of go back and forth a little bit now at the moment and use different parts of the creative brain, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I'm because at the moment I'm trying to get back into reading a lot more. And one of the books I finished off reading Jaws, but now I'm going on to Cormac McCarthy. And the thing about Cormac McCarthy is that he is so complicated. I mean, I know there's different types of styles of writing, but for crying out loud, if you want to keep your readers in so hooked in, I'm so glad that the story itself is so good because I mean, the way I mean, you yourself, obviously, when it comes to writing like punctuations and grammars and everything, that man doesn't know when to stop using the word and. And just like, just use a comma.
Yeah, fair enough. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a different kind of writing, I suppose, than I would do. Much more like I've always considered myself quite an emotional writer more than an intellectual one. And my stories are written very much from the heart more than the head. I
Mm,
think Cormac McCarthy might be perhaps the other way around, but it doesn't make one better than the other. It's just
yeah.
different styles. One of my favorite writers is John Banville, who writes very different types of novels than I write. But I love his work as a reader, and very fond of him as a person. And there's room for everybody.
When it comes to writing character, because you said you write from the heart and everything, is it very difficult for you that if you've grown attached to the character, but you know that this character's got to go in this different path, but is it a challenge for you that he's got to go or he or she's got to go that path, even though you want them to go that path? Do you get emotionally attached to them that much that you didn't want to yourself take them into that uh journey?
I wouldn't say I do, to be honest, because I think the whole challenge and the fun of writing novels is when you do create characters, then you do find maybe traumatic experiences to put them through and see how they'll survive it. So, if you take a novel of mine like The Heart's Invisible Furies, where Cyril, goes through 70 years of life in Ireland and a couple of other countries, and he goes through some like great moments and some tragic moments. It's all about sort of seeing how they respond to that, and you're kind of building the character through his or her responses to the events of their lives. So I think you have to kind of keep a slight distance between yourself and for a writer, keep a distance between yourself and the characters you're creating, and as look at it as a novel, look at it as hopefully a work of art, and you're trying to make the character as authentic as possible, so that the reader will have their own emotional engagement and will care about the journey that they're going on.
Mm. And when it comes to writing, you've written The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, you've written Earth, you've written so many novels. Any novels that you were really proud of that I've really justified my characters, I really justified the story? Was there ever that particular one, or is it just, listen, they're all good in their own way, as a lot of people would probably say?
No, I think if I look at them all lined up together, I could probably say which ones, in terms of achieving artistically what I set out to achieve, did I succeed on? And that's not going to be everyone. Over the course of a life, you do your best every time, you give it your very best shot, and sometimes you look back at one or two and think, well, I just didn't pull it off, in the way that I hoped. The ones that I think really I am very proud of would be certainly Hearts Invisible Furies, certainly A Ladder to the Sky, All the Broken Places. I think these most recent two, Water and Earth, a children's book, Boy at the Top of the Mountain. My brother's name is Jessica. I think they're actually all the more recent ones now that I think of it, but they're the ones I think are for me as good as I could make them. There's an early novel of the two books of mine that I would look back at and sort of think I didn't quite get it right. Would be my second novel, The Congress of Rough Riders, and my second young adult novel, Noah Barley Water Runs Away. And maybe it is no surprise that both are seconds. It's like the old second album syndrome or something.
Yeah.
So they were trickier ones, but that's okay. I think over the course of a lifetime, you're going to have a few that you think I just don't know if I got it right there.
You're still learning as a writer, I imagine. Each day you're learning different things, you learn different ways of approaching character, story, themes, and plots, etc. So would you tend to agree that it is a learning curve every single day?
Absolutely. And each novel teaches you something different. Each novel you read teaches you something. And on occasion, I've taught creative writing in universities, and even reading like the work of 18, 19, 20-year-olds or something and reading it for class, I can sort of spot the flaws maybe quite quickly, but I can also recognize sometimes, God, I'm doing that myself, and you can learn even from from the youngest, most inexperienced writers. I think you should always be learning in that way. It's you're never perfect, and I'm always trying to write the very best novel I can write every time, and hopefully whatever novel I leave on the computer when I die will be the best one that I was working on through my life. So yeah, and then that's what keeps it challenging. And with these most recent novellas, I've written a lot of long novels, so I wanted to challenge myself to write these very short books, four of them: Water, Earth, Fire, Air, connected stories, but stand alone. But each one 40,000 words, whereas a lot of my novels are somewhere between 160, 170,000 words. So that's been kind of a nice challenge as well. So I think you should always be seeing what you can do that might be fresh.
Speaking of Earth, I really wanted to know because the publishers that I got in contact with to get I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting on the book to be delivered to me. But there we go. But could you explain to me about Earth? I read the plot, but I really wanted to hear from yourself. Could you tell us what the story is about? And if I was to pick up Earth, what would I expect?
Well, it's about a young man called Evan Keogh, who is a footballer in the Championship League in the UK. He's Irish originally. And when the novella starts, he and one of his teammates are beginning a trial for rape and sexual assault. And throughout the story, what we go back and forth in alternate chapters between the trial itself and the events of his life that have led him towards this moment. The four books in this sequence, Water, Earth, Fire, Air, are all examining sexual assault in one way or another. So the first one, Water, was written from the point of view of an enabler. The second one, Earth, from the point of view of complicity. The third one, Fire, from the point of view of of a perpetrator. And the fourth one, Air, from the point of view of a victim. And each one, a minor character from each becomes the narrator of the next, but they're all standalone stories, as I say. So it's really looking at Evan's life and what brought him to this place. It's about I guess, a lot of the toxic masculinity that happens in team sports, particularly male team sports, particularly football and rugby, I think, and particularly those where there are academies that these kids grow up in, feeling that they're very much at the center of a bubble, that the world revolves around them, and that perhaps their view of the opposite sex is not as mature as it should be.
Where did you find the influ what was influencing you writing this story, especially in the world of in football as well? Would you say that there were bases of obviously the Benell case of what was that came out huge in the football world? Would you say that was the inspiration, or was it different inspirations from different other points?
It was
What's
quite a few, and not just in football, in rugby too. And
mm,
it's been so many in recent years. And I've always been sort of intrigued by these, like videos that get leaked online of footballers where they're sort of like multiple footballers with one girl or something, and where they
mm,
need, they need that audience. They need their friends there validating them in some way, just like, they need the audience when they're playing football. And it seems they seem like so. And this is not. I don't want to generalize. Not every footballer is like this, but um, it's like they don't see women as people in any way, just as sort of an object that can be used. And we see so many like trials that have happened. Some where people have been found guilty and sentenced to jail, and some where people have been acquitted, but that the things surrounding those trials, perhaps videos or text messages or WhatsApps, which are indisputable because they're in the evidence, do lead you to feel that these people have a very strange view of sexuality, of women, of their own role within that. And I think a lot of that is due to the experiences of growing up in academies where, these kids are taken in at a very young age, prepubescent, and they are essentially seen as assets. If they get all the way through, they can be sold for millions and millions and millions of pounds. But their emotional and educational needs are not always catered to, as well as their sporting needs.
mm. And it's really interesting because hopefully one day I will definitely get to because when what really attracted me was the fact that when I saw Red Earth, and I will read all the other the collection of stories because it sounds really interesting. But to pick it up and see, the perspective of many different characters, even though they're standalone novels. So I really look forward to reading them. Um, I gotta go into this one particular book, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I read it a few years ago. I only picked it up once. I read it and I just thought, fucking hell, in my own words. But was there ever a story in your mind that you really wanted to set it on the Holocaust? Was it something like it's going to be something to do with the Holocaust, but you did not know what? Would you say that's accurate, or would you
No,
say
no, quite the opposite. In fact, I had been very interested in the subject of the Holocaust since I was a teenager, and it was a subject that I went back to time and time again in my reading. But it was not something I thought I would ever write about. Even though through my teens and 20s, I was writing and I started getting my novels published towards the end of my 20s. But it was really a subject that I just wanted to constantly educate myself on to learn about. But because I'm Irish and I'm not Jewish, I didn't feel I would have a story I could tell. But I guess it just happened that like the idea for that book came to me. It was very simple at the start. It was just two boys sitting on either side of a fence talking to each other, and that led me to the full idea of the story. And I just sat down and started writing it. And I've never had an experience like that before, where a story just sort of poured out of me in almost like an automatic writing kind of way. Because I wrote that first draft in a very short space of time, and it sort of existed before I could even think about it too much, if you know what I mean. And then it kind of came together on the rewriting. But I had never in my life sat down and thought to myself, I want to write a book set during the Holocaust. And to be honest, I've never really thought in those terms about any of my books. It's more sort of each book has formed from maybe the idea for a character or a theme or just an incident in a story, and you build it around that. I've never sort of thought I want to write World War One or I want to write Russian Revolution or whatever it is. It's more the central characters, I think, or just a simple idea at the start, and everything kind of gets built around that.
Mm. When it came to the release of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, really successful. I mean, it's been read in schools and everything, but also um, there was some bit of controversy when there to the story, etc. Because it's like a lot of people. I mean, I'm a playwright myself, and um, and one of the things that I've always been encouraged to do is that if I'm ever going to write something that's accurate or something that's based on a real event. And for an example, I did a short play. It was only for university, like for a course, but it was all about the Aberfan disaster.
Oh yeah.
And one of my friends in my class said, because she's from the valleys where
Mhm.
obviously where Aberfan is, and she said, Rhys, you need to tread very carefully on what you're doing because it's still relevant. And I was like, well, that's absolutely fine because obviously being a Welshman, I don't know what it is about the Aberfan disaster, even though obviously I wasn't even born around that time or anything, but it's just being Welsh and there's something about the Aberfan disasters is like a added responsibility or added hurt or whatever. And to go up to Aberfan and see how quiet it is, just how quiet and eerie it is, and how still scarred. And it was just a bit of a wake up call to say, right, that I gotta tread waters on it. And then when The Crown did an episode of Aberfan, for a minute, again, I wasn't there. I had no family there, but it was like I'm carving a butcher out, going, yeah, come on in, you better tread carefully now. But it was just weird. But for you, what was really successful in that? Um, did you expect the backlash in terms of the criticism that you had from various people who criticized the quote unquote accuracy of the stories and bases, etc.?
Well, see, the interesting thing about that is that there was no criticisms for the first
Oh
sort of
no,
14.
oh, okay, fair enough.
No, 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 for the first 14, 15 years of the book's life.
Okay.
When the book came out in 2006, it was widely embraced all over the world. And up until about 2020, that was still the case. And then around that period, when sort of, I think the publishing kind of changed a bit and the world changed, everything was getting very I don't want to use this in a derogatory way, but things were getting so woke and everything, and publishing was affected by that with the idea that people can only tell stories related to themselves and so on. And Striped Pajamas got kind of dragged into that a little bit, and then it was maybe after 15 years it was ripe for a revisiting or something, and people revisited it, and suddenly it got all these criticisms. But the way I looked at it was that what people consider historical inaccuracy in that book, my answer to that is it's firstly, it's a novel. It's a made-up story. It's not a textbook. It's also subtitled a fable, a work of fiction with a moral at the center. It's never intended to be an absolutely historically accurate representation of the Holocaust. Neither Bruno nor Shmuel ever existed. I invented them. The word Auschwitz is never used in the book. I never asked anybody to use it in schools or colleges or anything as an
Mhm.
educational tool. It is simply a fable. And in fiction, I don't think there can be any inaccuracies. And actually, the people who talk about historical inaccuracies in Striped Pajamas, nobody's ever really told me, give me an example of any, because there isn't any. So, I mean, it can be a good book or a bad book, or so probably more likely somewhere in the middle book. But I do reject though that kind of criticism of it, because I just don't think it's I don't think it represents what fiction is
Mm,
about at all. I would say as well though that you talked about as a Welsh writer and Aberfan. In some ways, I've often thought it was better that I was on the outside a little bit.
mm,
I'm not Jewish, I'm not German, I don't have any personal family history involved in that subject, and it kind of gave me the freedom to do what Bruno does in the book, which is walk towards a fence, look across, and and ask questions. What is happening there? Who are those people? Why are they there? What's happening? Um, I actually think it was maybe if I had been Jewish or German, for example, I think I would have I would have felt more what you were saying about writing about Aberfan, that I would have felt I was talking about my own culture, my own people, sort of in a way, and it would be
mm.
slightly different. Um, I think Marcus Zusak, who wrote The Book Thief, which is a wonderful novel, also set during the Holocaust and published the same time as Striped Pyjamas, and he's Australian. And I think it almost, for both of us, worked slightly better to just be outsiders to a subject and approach it in that way. And I think we have the right to. I think anybody has the right
Yeah.
to.
Can anyone write? This is another question. Is like, do you encourage writers to write anything they want in a sense
Oh
of,
yeah.
because we've had loads
I
of.
think one of the worst pieces of advice that people, throw out there is write about what you know. Don't write about what you know. Write about what you don't know and find out.
Mm,
Like I'm sure you or I or any of your listeners, we don't just read books and novels about people who look like us, sound like us, come from the places we come from. We're all interested as readers in the entire world, and we want to know about other experiences. So like I've written, I don't know, 20 something books at this point, and only I think three, four of them are set in Ireland. And I think that's fine. I have the freedom to write about anywhere I want, but so do other people. If you want to write about Ireland, you want to write about Russia or Iceland or Jamaica, you've got the freedom to do that. The only responsibility on us as writers then is to do our very best to write a good book. But I don't believe in the idea that you could only write about your own experience or where you come from or your own sex or your own color or anything like that. I think you have the right to write anything you want.
Because it's like I'm reading the list of some of the names of books that have been controversial in over the years. You go like American Psycho, which I read when I was 15, and I will never forget because I finished doing a show like an Amdram show, and I always take a book with me when I'm in the change rooms, and I'll just have a bit of a read. And I had American Psycho, and my girlfriend, who's now my fiance, she was sat with me, and someone shouted out over the over the other end. She went, Emily, don't let Rhys eat you alive or something like that. It was a lot more descriptive, but I got people who probably be like, and I was like, I haven't even got to that bit yet, and I'm really like, oh, what's going on here? Then it's like Lolita, Fight Club, Lord of the Flies, 1984. You got all these books that have been considered controversial. But do you think it's? I mean, do you think it's fair that some of those books I've named is fair to say, well, not they're not that controversial, but
Do you know what all those books have in common? They were all published quite a long time ago, and
yeah.
they're still read today. They're still in bookshops, they're still in print, and here we are still talking about them. And for all the controversies of Striped Pajamas, which is almost 20 years old, people are still talking about them, talking about it. And that in itself is I think a considerable achievement because so many books get forgotten very, very quickly.
Mm,
There's books I read that I forget 6 months later. I can't remember what they were about. So, but all the books you mentioned, we still read today. And if they're controversial, they weren't always controversial at the time. Huckleberry Finn would be controversial today, but it wasn't controversial when it was published first.
mm,
And Farm the same way. American Psycho was controversial, but and it would probably be very, very difficult to publish a novel like that today. But maybe in 20 years' time, it wouldn't be difficult. I always say that I think it would be quite difficult to publish Striped Pajamas today, but it
mm,
wasn't 20 years ago, and it might not be 20 years hence. But in this particular moment in the world, in the publishing world, it would be it would be a trickier book to get out there. There's nothing wrong with a bit of controversy. I don't think you should be looking for controversy's sake.
mm.
But if a book, you know, winds people up a little bit and, gets them talking and gets them both passionate and angry at the same time, that's not such a bad thing. For all the kind of people who who have been pretty negative about striped pajamas over the last few years. There's just as many, if not actually, there's 10 times more who are very passionate about it. And I think that's what a good piece of literature can do. And
Yeah.
it can provoke different opinions. And the writer has to accept that. I know I accept it. It's fine.
Did you it, it's a learning curve as well. Like it would, I think the theme of this interview that we're doing is like it's always learning to do different things and that, but learning to accept what this is, you know. And another thing as well, when we talk about controversy, you know, no good writer is gonna want to write a book that, oh, I want to write it because I want to cause some controversy.
So you won't write a good book if you do that.
No,
If
exactly. You're not a
if
good
it's
writer
just
if you're going to
media.
do that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, anyone could do that. Anyone could do that. But what people will do in terms of a book or a play or a film, well, not so much of a, I mean, depending on, you know, if you're making a documentary, I suppose, but like a play or a book. And if you're saying, if the writer of that particular play or book is saying, I wrote it because I wanted to cause controversy, are people going to just look at you and go, what the fuck you want? What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
That would seem like a very kind of teenage thing
Yeah,
to me.
that's such a
You know,
teenage immature
um,
thing to do. Why?
yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I don't think that that would work, and it would come across in the writing itself. I think a lot of people who write books that end up being controversial, like mine, or like something like American Dirt by Janine Collins more recently, are always a little bit surprised by the controversy. Same when I wrote My Brother's Name is Jessica, which caused a whole maelstrom of drama. And the writer, as myself, is like going, why? What's the big deal? What's the problem here?
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes people just want to, invent outrage
Yeah.
when they're not really outraged at all. It's very few things that outrage me in life, but there are people that seem to be outraged every time they get out of bed.
Yeah. Do you
Like,
do you
it's
think
like that Marlon Brando line in I can't remember. Is it the Wild one? Where what are you rebelling against? What do you got?
yeah.
Looking for something.
That's another thing as well, because my Bamp is very obviously being old school and everything, but the one thing he doesn't mind saying is, look, if you don't, if you got a cause, fight for the cause and everything, but what are you why he doesn't like it that there are things that have been said, written, done, whatever, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and people are bringing it here now and saying that is bad, and it's like, where were you 50 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, you
um
can't you have to judge everything by the standards of their time.
yeah.
The people, for example, that would say those kind of things today and sort of like um, judge things today by judge the past by the standards of today. Their beliefs now will be different, and the next generation down the line will think differently, and the next generation will think differently again. All works of art, for example, are also historical documents. Whether you read, back to Homer or read a debut novel that's being published this week, they represent the time and place and attitudes in which they were written. And to rewrite these, there was a big controversy a few years ago about rewriting Roald Dahl books to make them less um, supposedly offensive. And he was quite rightly up in arms, saying, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. Like you can't rewrite these things. And the whole joy of reading Roald Dahl was it always seemed a little bit dangerous when you were a kid. And you don't want to take that away. But there are words and things that one would not use in a book today. But I don't think that means they should be censored from the past. Because where
Mm.
does it end? Eventually you stripping all the words out and did the writer write it at all?
Yeah, yeah. And as well, I mean, looking onto Roald Dahl, I mean, I was a bit, I was sat there thinking, why? What good will it do? What
Hmm.
good will it do in the future? It just won't do anything. It's just, but even then, I think sometimes with it's like with Agatha Christie. I mean, so I can't remember the actual, what was it? And then there were none. I think it was And Then There Were None, but
Yeah,
originally it wasn't called that. I'm not going to
yeah.
repeat it on here for Christ's sake, but
Yeah. I
but
mean, and that's
we
one that I would sort of like agree with as a
yeah,
title. So I think it's probably was worth changing that title. Um,
exactly.
but so I guess I'm almost contradicting myself, but I think it was probably worth changing that title. But yeah, outside of that, in terms of say Huckleberry Finn, where that same offensive word is used, I think you sort of have to leave it there because it is part of the culture of the time, the people of the time. If you are going to read it to your kids or if you're going to read it in a classroom, sure, you want to explain why these words are not used anymore and why they're inappropriate and why they're offensive, but also to explain that at the time they were used because attitudes were different. And that doesn't mean that we endorse those attitudes. It means we've learned from them and we've come past them. But that's probably a more healthy conversation to have
Mm,
than just, going through everything and changing them.
yeah. I think as well, people are just too angry, easily can get angry just like that, where it's just, I think,
Well, are they even
open,
angry or do they just want to come across as being angry? Like,
yeah,
it baffles me sometimes the things people get annoyed about. And I just think, are you really all that annoyed? Is this really keeping you up at night? Or is it just something to get onto Twitter to like to say? Like, I'm very rarely angry about anything. I just kind of get on with my day. I don't let
yeah,
anything really upset me that much.
yeah.
Certainly not the kind of trivial things that people seem to get upset about online.
Yeah, yeah, and I always believe now it's like life's too short. I mean, look, I'm 27 years old. I got my whole life ahead of me, and I just want to enjoy writing for theatre or writing
Ah,
poetry, and that's what I want to do. That's what I find fun doing, and I want to live to the fullest of for doing that. You
yeah.
know,
And
and
actually
I
on that, one thing I've learned in recent years is to do my ultimate best to just stay out of those arguments. If people
yeah,
want to fight with you on something you've written or something I've written, sure, you can listen to that point of view, but there's very little to be gained by arguing back,
yeah,
because people generally don't hear it. I've tried my best. I'm not to sort of sanctify myself, but I've tried my very best to listen to the various criticisms made of different books of mine. And if I haven't agreed with them, it's because I've thought it through, and I have my own reason for the way I wrote it. But there's just nothing to be gained by having some lengthy back and forth with somebody you don't know who isn't in your life. It's not the same as, say, sitting down with a friend or a
mm,
family member who wants to have a conversation with you about it. People online, for example, the one thing you will never hear anybody say is that's a good point. Because nobody ever does. Everybody kind of gets entrenched in their positions and
mm,
they refuse to listen to each other. And like you say, life is just too short. So I
yeah,
just walk away from it most of the time.
yeah. Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalised keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewellery, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle, or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF627EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You can even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film, or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewelry? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Veil Jewelry Workshops. Veil Jewelry Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewelry. They will help you make a range of silverware including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.veiljewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@veiljewelryworkshops.co.uk or even phone them at 07789 794248. Going on, when you mentioned my brother's name is Jessica, why did you want to write it in the first place? Was it something that you felt passionate about? Was it something that it was going to be the next book anyway. And I know you wrote a few books after The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, but what I'm trying to get at is what was it like an intended thing to go, right, this is the book I want to write, this is the story, these are the characters. It's like a purpose, if I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. I mean, I was writing it in 2017 and 2018, and this was just before the subject of transgender people became, you know, all encompassing, where it's
Yeah.
just everywhere. So I was just a little ahead of the loop somehow on that. And I had a friend, or I have a friend who has a trans daughter, and I was interested in her experience. And if there is, I've never been convinced by the existence of such a thing as the LGBT community. I don't really believe in community, as in everybody thinks the same way, and we all, you've got straight people on one side and you've got everybody else on the other. But if there is such a thing, I'm part of it. I'm gay, so it was a subject that just interested me, and I wanted to write about it. And I wanted to write about it from a compassionate perspective, and to see if I could do something that would help kids or teenagers who are maybe going through some sort of gender dysphoria, and questioning it. And I wrote that book from the perspective not of the trans character, but of the trans character's little brother, who was 12, and who is looking at the person he's always considered to be his brother, and who announces at the start that, no, I think I'm a girl. And that the 12-year-old boy, quite naturally for a 12-year-old boy, is thinking, no, I don't want this to happen. I love my brother the way he is. I've always hero worshipped my brother. So he's I don't think he's bigoted, 12-year-old, but what he is he's a kid. So the
Yeah.
story really is him going on this journey of acceptance, realizing that the person he's always loved exists, just with a different name and a different body, and presenting themselves differently. And that's the lesson he learns as the story goes on. So it always baffled me the way that, and it wasn't actually trans people who criticized the book. It was these so-called, allies, which are generally, these strange middle-aged men online who obsess over this subject. And I was writing something compassionate, which and I still think that's a very, very good book. I'm very pleased with that book.
Mm. Do you know what? I will hold my hands up. I
I'm
need to
right
read
on
it.
it. Yeah.
No, I'm going to. There's so many list of books. I mean, I've read a couple of your books, and I need to read that book because I've had a few friends of mine say, "Oh, Rhys, you got to pick up this book. It's really good." So I know. So you give me a longer list now, John. Thank you very much. Um, so how did you when? Because you said there was like people online. What? It's just the dangers of social media now is that everyone's got it's like, well, what did Mike Tyson say? Everyone's got an opinion on social media, and the worst thing about it is that you can't respond by punching him in the face or something like that for the way they have
Yeah.
opinions. But
Yeah.
I mean, you're proud anyway to have written that book
Oh God, yeah.
and
I wouldn't
stand
change,
by
yeah,
it.
I wouldn't change a word of that book. If I could change anything about the experience, I would
Mm,
probably go back and just not have answered people, and let them basically, like, babies cry themselves out. But the mistake I made in 2019 when the book came out was to answer people online, because it wasn't like people were making legitimate criticisms politely about the book. It was just enraged nonsense from a
yeah.
bunch of lunatics, with issuing death threats and acting like they knew me or my intentions. And it's just, looking back, it was just so silly, and these people are so silly, that I should have just ignored them and got on with my day. But at the time, it's like you feel you're being so misrepresented, and your character is being misrepresented, and your book is being misrepresented, and it's probably natural you want to defend yourself in some way. But I wouldn't do that again. I would just let them scream and shout. If it
Mm,
makes them happy, fuck them. Um, but the book lasts. It was published all over the world. It won some awards, and I was very happy with it. And that seemed to incense people even more, I suppose. I think because a lot of the time, what those people online want you to do is they want you to apologize. Um, but I had nothing to apologize for, and I absolutely refused. I stood my ground in the way that J.K. Rowling stands her ground, and refused to apologize to a bunch of online lunatics.
mm. Moving on from with all the writing, it's just obviously you've written not just adult fiction, you've written young people's fiction, children's fiction, and everything. What is the difference in how you right when it comes to adult fiction and children's fiction. Probably the idea is no effing and blinding in the children's novels or younger books.
It's actually not that much difference in a sense because like the six books I've written for young people, the themes aren't any simpler. You know, three of them are about war, one of them about the death of a parent, one of them about a transgender kid, one of them about a gay kid. And you know, these are serious subjects. And I write serious subjects, I think, in my adult books as well. So it's what I write about with the YA books generally is putting a child in a very adult circumstance way before their time. And as we know, unfortunately, a lot of children do go through adult experiences way before their time. So I guess a lot of the time I'm trying to write something that will help children go through that. But I don't make the language any simpler. The only, I mean, it's really just having a child at the center of the story rather than an adult, and they're shorter books. But other than that, you know, I don't really change my method of writing or my method of planning a book or anything like that. It's just the same. And funnily enough, sometimes I say to writer friends who exclusively write for adults, I say, do you ever think about writing a kid's book? And they say, oh no, I wouldn't know how. I wouldn't know how to write a kid's book. And I always say, but you would, you firstly you grew up reading them and you know how to write a novel. And you might think it's a difficult thing or a scary thing to approach, but actually it's not. Just write about a child. And I think I've convinced a few of them they should at least think about it.
What books that inspired you when you were growing up then as a child? What were the books that stood out to you?
Oh, there was a book called, I don't know if you ever read The Silver Sword by Ian Serraillier, which
Oh,
I think was about 12 maybe. And it was a wonderful, wonderful novel set during the Second World War about these Polish children fleeing the Nazis. And it was quite scary, but quite dramatic. And I loved books when I was a kid about children who are on their own in the world. And I've written myself a lot about orphans and kids on their own. I think actually in the YA books, it's almost better to get the parents out of the way as quickly as possible. Because I think that's what kids like to read. How can you be the hero of your own story? How can you solve your own problems without the adults coming in and having to do it for you? So that book, The Silver Sword, was one. I loved the Narnia books.
mm.
I really liked them. I got quite into classic fiction early, things like Oliver Twist and Kidnapped and Robinson Crusoe, all that kind of things. I was only maybe about 12 or so when I started reading those kind of 19th century classics, but again, usually ones that featured a child at the center of them.
So with everything you got for Water, Earth, and Beyond, is there any projects that have intrigued you recently? Any stories, whether it be set in real life or any ideas of
Well,
fiction?
I did set myself a new challenge that I have my first picture book is coming out in July for like for 4-year-olds, one of those kind of big square
Oh
picture
yeah.
books illustrated, and it's called The Dog Who Danced on the Moon, and it all rhymes. And we got an illustrator in, Aisling Lindsay, to do all these beautiful illustrations. And it's a lot of fun, but it's also, I think, empowering for kids at that age, because it's about this little boy who wants to be an astronaut and his dog who wants to be a dancer. And one thing happens after another, and they end up going to the moon and so on, and dancing on the moon. And that was really, really fun to do. And I've signed up to do a few more of those. And I started doing some script writing. So I guess like my life does revolve around finding different ways to tell stories. But I'm not too old to find new ways.
Mm.
I've written adult novels, young adult novels, short stories. Now I'm writing scripts, picture books. Um, I haven't written a play. You're saying about playwriting. Maybe I should give that one a shot. But I think it's nice to just keep challenging yourself. And the more you learn about words and storytelling and dialogue and themes, the more challenges you can set yourself.
Mm. I should have asked this question right at the very beginning. I may have done, but um, why did you want to become a writer in the first place? Was there a specific book that you read, or was it that one day you just thought, I'm going to start writing? I know you said you started writing when you were a kid, but what was that moment that?
I honestly don't think I ever wanted to be one. I think I just always was one. That like my earliest memories are things with paper and pens and books. Going to the library all the time, but not just reading, but getting my mom to get me foolscap paper, buy me pens, and I was just writing stories. It was just there. I think in the same way that like if you're a painter, you're probably from childhood always working with colors and everything like that. There was never a sort of a eureka moment. It was more that I just can't remember a time when I wasn't doing that. And even as, I often say that when I was like 7, 8, 9, if adults would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would always say, I want to write books. And it seemed like they would laugh because it seemed so precocious. But for myself, I was just like, what's so funny about that? It's no different than saying I want to be a footballer or I want to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
It just was very much inside me that that was what I was going to do. I didn't know if I was ever going to be good enough to do it, but I just never had any sort of backup plan. It was just, this is what I'm going to do. It's what I'm going to do, be in my life.
Yeah. It was. I remember when I was a kid, I was in nursery and well, not nursery. It was like when I was about 9 or 10 years old. I love bad and I laugh, and I thought,
Nursery
oh,
at 9 again. So,
no, not nursery. I was like, why did I say nursery? I was in primary school, for Christ's sakes. Um, and I remember everyone was talking about what do they want to be when they grow up and everything, and no one asked me. And an old schoolmate of mine back then, he was sat next to the teacher and went, Rhys wants to be a football hooligan, and I just went, I told you that in confidence. I was like, I told you that.
oh, dear.
God, but that was just like
What did your
because I
teachers?
remember it clear as crystal because I don't know what happened at the time. Football Factory was a big
Yeah.
thing, and unfortunately, I happened to. My dad was like, "Yeah, you're gonna watch that," and I was like, oh, "Okay, then I'm gonna be a football again because Danny Dyer is really good in it." But then, but at the same time, I was always like a little clown, loved to perform, loved to do mimicking voices. So but at the same time, I hate to go into the theater. Hate to go and watch shows. I never forget. I went to watch Annie. Three of my cousins were in it, and I was just sat there going, "Oh my God, I'm gonna fall asleep. I'm just gonna,
Is it because you
I might."
wanted to be on the stage?
Yeah. Well, it's not even being on the stage. It was just, it never thought came to my mind until one of my cousins a few years later, who I saw performing Annie. She went, Rhys, you're so good at performing. You're so good at doing voices. You're good at this. Why didn't you join an Amdram society? And I just thought, I didn't want to. But as soon as I did, I was like, I want to do this. I want to
Yeah. Yeah.
be acting. But then when it got into sixth form and go before going to university, I started reading a lot more plays with Tennessee Williams, Howard Pinter, Arthur Miller, and a few others. And I was like, oh my God, like now I want to do this. Now I want
Hmm.
to write scripts and
Well, you
everything.
can do both. I mean, you're still young, and you can
Oh
do both.
yeah. I mean, at the moment as well, I'll announce it now. I mean, I got a play out called Talk, and
Okay.
it's a play about three men who have the pub all to themselves, and it's basically those three opening up and talking about their mental health. Because one of them is but basically two of the three friends are trying to help the other one by having this night where let's close him in this pub and let's get him to open up. But as the story progresses, they all open up. We did it
Okay.
in a
Interesting.
uh, we did it in a local theater just a couple of miles away from where I'm living now in Barry. And now the opportunity has arisen that I'm going to have it be performed in London
Oh,
in
wow.
in
Congratulations.
thank you very much in the Bread and Roses Theatre. I don't know if have you ever heard of the Bread and Roses
I
Theatre?
have. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be performed in there, and my friend and also manager slash exec producer, it was him. He was like pushing me. He's like, right, you got to get this on, and we're doing it for only 2 days, and I'm going to be performing in it because
Great.
I didn't originally perform it in Cowbridge where we did it first time. It was just three friends, but then two of them dropped out, and I was encouraged by a few people, do it. It's your play, you know the characters. And I was like, fair enough, we're off to London. Here we go.
Yeah. I mean, like that's what you have to do. Like
Yeah.
when I was your age, I went to London for a year as well, trying to get my career off the ground. I had I was in my late 20s. I had a couple of novels rejected already. I went to I was working in a bookshop, but I got a job in head office in London, and I thought I'll go there for a year. And my intention was based because I was working in the marketing department. I would be going to book launches, I would be going to events, kind of meeting publishers, meeting editors, meeting agents, trying to get my name around there, trying to get people who might read me. And it worked. That the year I sold my first novel was the year that I lived in London. So, and I didn't have two pennies to rub together practically. But, when you're young, you have to take those chances when they present themselves and make the most of them.
Mm. What piece of advice then? I bet you get asked this question all the time as an author. What advice you give? But what do you give to people that really want to be an author, really want to be a playwright, etc.?
I really do believe in writing groups. I think writing groups are great for a number of reasons. One is that you have deadlines, and deadlines are crucial. Two is that you have an audience. A writer needs readers, and a workshop will give you that. And three, I honestly think you learn more about writing from reading other people's work and analyzing it and going into a workshop or a classroom and being prepared to talk about it than you do hearing them talk about yours. Because you have to spend all that time, making notes, thinking about it, understanding how writing is working, recognizing what they're doing that's working well, recognizing what's flawed, and then you start to think about that in terms of your own work. So I always encourage people to do writing workshops. I think they can be really helpful, and I did them myself. I did the MA in creative writing at University of East Anglia, when I was 22, 23. Studying under Malcolm Bradbury, and it was it was a kind of a chaotic and emotional year, but it was very helpful as well. But those deadlines, and I've taught there myself, and I've often said to students, the trick is you're here for a year, but during that year, that you have to submit work on this date, this date, and this date. But when you leave here, you don't have to submit any work anymore, so it's up to you. So those deadlines that can be imposed by continuing on in workshops will be really helpful.
Last question for you now, John, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I've really enjoyed myself speaking to you. Now, I've always asked this question to all my guests, and I'm going to ask you this one now. How do you look back on your career?
Oh, with joy, with total joy. I've had my ups and downs, certainly in different things, but um, this is all I ever wanted to do with my life, and I've been so fortunate to have the ability to do it, to have readers have come to my books. And there's also a little bit of luck involved. Like when you get your first book published or your first hit, sometimes it's, the luck of it landing on the right editor's desk or the right person in the media's desk and who promotes it. There's a little bit of that involved as well. And I think I've worked really, really hard. And I've had a little bit of luck on my side at times, but I've worked hard and I've given my best to all my books, and I still love it the same way I did when I was starting out. The challenge of writing a book is still so exciting to me. So when I look back, I just feel fulfilled and joyous.
Are you looking for the perfect bracelet for a loved one? Would your man be interested in a personalised keyring from his children? Are you looking for the best priced jewellery, whether it be a necklace, ring, earrings, bangle or even more? Look no further than Crafted Arts. Crafted Arts is a local business based in Barry within the Vale of Glamorgan, and they have a range of all the perfect items you need. If it's for the perfect gift for an anniversary, or maybe it's for someone's birthday, maybe something for Christmas, or you wanted to give someone that perfect gift that will last a long time, Crafted Arts is the business for you. If you want to know more or see what they have in stock, then you can visit them locally at 29 High Street, Barry, Vale of Glamorgan, CF627EB, or you can go onto their website at www.craftedarts.co.uk. You could even email them at info@craftedarts.co.uk, or maybe just give them a call at 07789 94248. Trust me, it's worth it for the perfect gift. The best thing about Creative Space is that we don't just want to encourage people in being creative in TV, film or even theatre. We also want you to be creative in a variety of other things as well. So do you want to have experience in making jewellery? Do you want to pick up a hobby but do not know what to take or where to start? Then look no further than the Vale Jewellery Workshops. Vale Jewellery Workshops provides the best experience in teaching you how to make the best sterling silver jewellery. They will help you make a range of silverware including rings, bracelets, and many more pieces. You will learn the basic silversmith skills such as soldering, texturing, shaping, and lots more. Not only do the workshops provide the experience for adults, it also provides the best experience and fun for children as well. So if you want to learn on how to make sterling silver jewelry, and if you're very interested, go onto their website at www.veiljewelryworkshops.co.uk or get in touch with them via email at info@veiljewelryworkshops.co.uk or even phone them at 07789 794248.